Hey apes, this is part 2 and part 3 of the screencast tonight. So part 2, we're doing GMOs. So either just follow along with the screencast and do study guide questions later, or you can do study guide questions for part 2 and part 3 as we're moving along with this. So GMOs are created through genetically engineering organisms. This isn't simply just crossbreeding or breeding for selected traits. This is using recombinant DNA from multiple organisms, and this is done in a lab setting. There are benefits and there are risks. So some of the benefits are increased nutritional content, the agricultural efficiency. We can make things grow faster. We can make them grow with less. We can make them disease resistant. However, GMOs, we don't really know a lot about them. Like with DDT. At the time when DDT was being developed, it was this miracle pesticide. And then 30, 40 years later, we're realizing, oh crap, this is really deadly. So we're not exactly sure of all of the negative effects of it, if there are any. So biotechnology is how this is done, and GMOs are considered transgenic. So they have DNA from another species, different genes, okay? And biotechnology is really amazing because it's created medicines, it cleans up pollution. We have different organisms that can go into the body to dissolve blood clots and things like that. So like I said before, this isn't your crossbreeding. There are a lot of things that critics say about GMOs, and people say, let's just stick with the traditional breeding, okay? So in traditional breeding, these genes come together on their own, which is very different from your genetically modified organisms. So genetically modified foods are huge business. Most of these crops are herbicide resistant. So basically, you can spray an herbicide on a plant, okay? An herbicide kills a plant, but you can spray an herbicide on these resistant plants and they won't die, but the weeds around them will die. So in the US, most soybeans, we call them Roundup Ready soybeans, and they're resistant to the herbicide Roundup. So the soybeans don't die, but the weeds around them do. So the soybeans have now been sprayed with all of this herbicide, but they don't die. In the US, soybeans, corn, cotton, and canola are generally GMO modified to be herbicide resistant. Okay. So golden rice, flavor saver tomato, BT corn, and like I was talking about, those Roundup Ready soybeans. Okay, I don't need to go over this. Know these examples. Supporters maintain that genetically modified crops are safe. They pose no ill health effects. They benefit the environment by using less herbicides. They encourage no-till farming, and they reduce carbon emissions by needing fewer fuel-burning tractors and sequestering this carbon in the soil by no-till farming. Okay? Very, very good benefits of GMOs. However, people are saying they're dangerous to human health. You have escaping genes that are transgenic. They can pollute ecosystems and target these non-target organisms. So you have these pests that can evolve resistance to these GMOs. It can ruin the integrity of native ancestral races of plants and animals. And in general, we don't like tinkering with our natural foods. Now there's the non-GMO product in Whole Foods. They have these things labeled, and all organic is non-GMO. So there's a lot of research going on. There are positive, negatives. And a lot of people are saying, let's use the precautionary principle. So don't do any new action until it's understood. However, it may take the next 50 years until we really understand GMO crops. Europe, there are no genetically modified organisms unless they're labeled, okay? India, China, Brazil approved GM crops. Zambia refuses US aid because most of the crops being sent over are GMOs, and they don't want that stuff. Monsanto will go into a lot when we're watching Food Inc. They're a multinational agricultural and chemical corporation. They were the ones who came out with DDT, PCBs, Agent Orange, and bovine growth hormones. Not a lot of environmentalists like Monsanto. My mom hates them. I get an email like every single day about sign this petition about Monsanto. So we're going to watch these clips in class. And that brings us to CAFOs, okay? So we have, because of the wealth in the country, our global meat production has increased fivefold. As you go through the demographic transition model, You have more affluence, you have more wealth. So people are eating higher up on the food chain, which means there's less energy. Okay, so per capita meat consumption has doubled. We're going to watch these clips in class. And our CAFOs are our feedlots, the factory farms, concentrated animal feeding operations or feedlot operations. These are huge warehouses and pens and these animals that are very closely packed. The image that you're seeing on the right is actually a really decent looking CAFO. These birds are really good looking, and that's actually not the case with most of these CAFOs. Okay, a lot of chickens are debeaked. They spend their lives living in cages. There's no quality of life for these animals. They're just there to serve us. And benefits is we're growing more in a smaller amount of time. We have more food. The Green Revolution was let's feed the majority of the world. Let's feed more people. This takes, just like cities, we concentrate this pollution in one area. So it's actually preserving the biodiversity around it, but then you have this concentrated pollution in this area. Okay, the insane water and air pollution that comes from these CAFOs is crazy, and we're going to see that. And there's super crazy heavy amounts of antibiotic use to control disease, because when you take anything and you put them in closely packed together, you have disease, which is a density dependent factor that spreads like wildfire through these areas. We can make a lot of our energy choices through our food choices. So in order to because of the rule of 10% or 90%, 90% of your energy is lost as you move up from trophic level to trophic level. So the lower you eat on the food chain, the more energy that there actually is at that chain. Okay, so it takes 20 kilograms of feed, okay, of grain to produce 1 kilogram of beef. It's less for pork, it's less for eggs, even less for chickens, and then less for milk. Okay, however, 1.1 kilogram is still used to make 1 kilogram of milk. This is your energy is always decreasing. You can't get something for nothing. Environmental ramifications of eating meat are the land and water needed to raise the livestock. You need the least amount of space for producing eggs and chicken. Producing beef is the most. So if you see these images down here, you have on the left the land required to produce 1 kilogram of protein and the water required to produce 1 kilogram of protein. So for every kilogram of beef, you need 750 kilograms of water. Okay, you can do that. You can do the calculation into gallons from that. We're not going to do that now. Aquaculture is fish farming. So you have aquatic plants, mollusks, and fish that are the big fish farm species. You also have crustaceans like shrimp and lobster that are also farmed. Our world fish populations are plummeting in our oceans because of tragedy of the commons and overfishing. So what we're doing is now we're taking these oceanic species and these river species and we're putting them in pens and we're raising them. And salmon is raised this way a lot. Aquaculture is growing super rapidly. It's most widespread in Asia, and it provides 1/3 of the world's fish for human consumption. Tilapia and catfish are the #1 things that are farmed in the US, and also salmon. It'll say fish farmed salmon. Most of the salmon is farmed. Benefits: you have a reliable protein source that's sustainable. It reduces the fishing process pressure on overharvested wild fish stocks. It's very energy efficient. We can genetically modify these organisms to make them grow fatter, whereas we can't do that when they're in the ocean. The drawbacks is they're also treated, it's like a CAFO. You have a highly concentrated amount of organisms in a small space, and it requires expensive antibiotics. It reduces the food security because all of them can die at once. They produce insane amounts of waste. These farmed fish may escape and introduce the disease into the wild. And there's a lot of sensitive ecosystems that are being destroyed for fish farming areas. So in Asia, and specifically in Thailand, what you have is a lot of the mangrove forests that are actually being cut down for fish farming operations, shrimp mostly.